We are now in part 2 of our lectures on Mill. Here, we're going to discuss the distinction of high quality versus low quality pleasures. And then we're going to discuss the expert view of making that distinction and the faculty's view of making that distinction. Mill points out that pleasures are different not in quantity only, but also in quality. The difference in quality is actually much more significant than that in quantity. Quantity is measured in terms of intensity, duration, short term versus longer term, right? So the claim here is that superior pleasures are not about greater intensity, duration, or being long term. Mill argues that quality of pleasure has much more to do with happiness than its quantity. In other words, a short life of qualitatively high pleasures may be much happier and more preferable to a long life of qualitatively low pleasures. Thus, the difference between pleasures of high quality and low quality is fundamental. For example, a game of tic-tac-toe, let us say, qualitatively offers 5 units of pleasure, while, sorry, that's quantitatively. Let me do that again. For example, a game of tic-tac-toe, let us say, quantitatively offers 5 units of pleasure, while a game of football offers 20 such units. If the difference was indeed in quantity only, then happiness would be the same, whether one plays football once or tic-tac-toe 4 times. But as it happens, happiness and fulfillment cannot be the same in these two options. Football is a qualitatively higher activity and pleasure, and no amount of tic-tac-toe could equal it. In general, there's a difference in quality between two things if no amount of one could equal another. Not 20 units of one could equal another, not 40, not 60. No amount of one good could equal the other good. That would mean the difference between them is in terms of quality and not quantity. Mill's point is that the more high quality activities and pleasures there are in one's life, the happier one is. But how does one know the difference between higher quality and lower quality pleasures and activities? Mill offers 2 cues as to how we can tell the difference between lower and higher pleasures and activities. 2 cues. Q1. If two people tell us that two opposing activities are high pleasures, the person with a wider experience of different kinds of pleasures on the basis of which they judge is more likely to be right. A person of wider experience is what we would call an expert. An expert's opinion advising us what activity is a better use of our time is better than that of a non-expert, a person with a much more narrow range of kinds of pleasures that they have experienced. But what if experts disagree? Then we would maximize our chances of happiness and not wasting our time by choosing what most experts can agree on. And that is the higher quality activity and pleasure. Q2, to distinguishing between lower and higher pleasures and how we know which pleasure is lower and which pleasure is higher. We can distinguish lower faculties and higher faculties by which we relate to reality. The higher faculties are those of imagination, intellect, feeling, and social sentiment. The lower faculties are those of sensation. Mill invites us to recognize that activities that engage more of our imagination, intellect, feeling, and social sentiment are much more fulfilling than those that involve less of these, even if the latter activities are accompanied by intense and long-lasting sensations. Human beings are beings of the mind, imagination, intellect, feeling, and social sentiment, and not merely of the body, sensation. If the mind is not engaged, we are likely to be bored, even if we are engaged by intense stimulations of the senses alone. For example, there are films that offer a lot to think, imagine, and feel about by means of complex plots, character development, cinematography, ideas, and so on. And then there are films that offer very little of the above, or very familiar, predictable, and comfortable plots, character, cinematography, and ideas. But these latter films may have excellent special effects. The second type of films are mainly low sensory pleasures, while the former films are the high pleasures of the mind. The second type of film offers little to happiness, while the other type offers a lot to happiness. One can discuss whether a film is of lower or higher quality by discussing what it offers to the intellect, imagination, feeling, and social affects. And that is what good film critics do, rather than simply provide summaries. And film critics are experts, since they watch and think about film 40 hours a week. If you can find critics that agree on a high quality of the film, that film is likely well worth your time. The same can be said about everything else. Vacations, I meant to write vacations. The same can be said about everything else. Vacations, houses, jobs, relationships, etc. The more they offer to the mind, and the more the experts agree about them, the more likely they are to make us that much happier. And that is what we should be doing with our lives, as far as our resources permit. Resources like money, time, education, skills, development of our talents and other capacities, etc. That is also an argument for acquiring such resources, so that we can fill our lives with more higher pleasures and activities. But do people not have different tastes? And some things make some people happy, while other things make other people happy. Mill's point is this: some prefer soccer, others football, others baseball, others tennis, etc. So there is more than one high-quality pleasure one can engage in. But in comparison to these, tic-tac-toe is a relatively low pleasure. And as it does not challenge and engage the intellect, imagination, feeling, and social affect nearly as much as the other listed sports do. So there is a variety. So there's a variety of high pleasures that one can engage in, but all of them are higher than low pleasures. And so choose your high pleasure, but stay away from the low pleasures. That seems to be Mill's point.